The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow across the freshly painted facade of the bookstore, the letters of Evelyn's Books and Cafe still smelling faintly of drying paint. Marcus had just finished tightening the last bolt on the new sign bracket when a shadow fell across the sidewalk. He didn't need to turn around to feel the change in the air. The polished black shoes, the slow, measured footsteps, he already knew. Marcus Hill. The voice was clipped, formal, and just loud enough for the few neighbors gathered outside to hear. Turning, Marcus saw him, Thomas Grady, city inspector, clipboard tucked under one arm like a sheriff's badge. His tie was perfectly knotted, and his eyes scanned the storefront with the detached scrutiny of a man assessing something he didn't intend to approve. "Yes, that's me," Marcus said, keeping his voice calm but his stance firm in the doorway. Grady stepped closer, clicking his pen open. "We've had a routine review of properties in this district. There are a few issues that need immediate attention before this can be deemed safe for public operation." Marcus crossed his arms. "Like what?" Grady tapped the clipboard. "Exterior step height is 1 inch above code, possible electrical wiring inconsistencies, and," he glanced up, "your signage violates historic preservation standards." The crowd murmured. One of the elders, Mr. Clark, muttered under his breath, they didn't care about historic preservation when the place was rotting. Marcus's jaw tightened. Funny. None of these issues came up when the building was boarded up for 10 years. Grady ignored the comment, walking the perimeter like a man inspecting cattle. He scribbled notes, then added, "We'll need to suspend operation until these matters are addressed. Failure to comply will result in fines, or repossession." The word hit like a hammer, repossession. Marcus stepped forward, the doorframe casting a long shadow between them. "We're opening in 2 days. People are counting on this place. If you're looking for a bribe." Grady's face hardened. "Watch yourself, Mr. Hill. This is procedure." "Procedure for who?" Marcus asked. "Because I've seen businesses 3 blocks over open with worse wiring than this, and nobody shut them down." The inspector's eyes darted to the small crowd. He straightened his tie and said, "I'll expect the necessary adjustments. Good day." And just like that, he walked off, leaving tension thick in the summer air. Miss Evelyn stepped outside, wiping flour from her hands. She had been baking bread for the cafe section. What was all that about? Marcus sighed, looking at the clipboard marks now burned into his memory. "They're trying to shut us down before we even open." Her gaze hardened. "Not on my watch." Night strategy. That night, the store was dim except for the desk lamp in the corner. Marcus sat with Layla Carter, the young researcher who had been mapping out historic redlining in the city. She flipped her laptop around to show him scanned documents from the 1940s, maps drawn with thick red borders. "This isn't random," Layla said. "This building? It's right in the middle of a historically redlined zone. Back then, they said it was to protect property value. Today, they use safety codes, zoning restrictions, and preservation laws to keep economic growth out." Marcus leaned back, rubbing his temples. "So Grady's not just following orders. He's part of a system." "Exactly," she said. "And the only way to fight a system is to document it and expose it." The plan began to take shape. Over the next week, they would 1. Fix every so-called violation with volunteer help. 2. Photograph and record every interaction with city officials. 3. Launch a property defense fund, a community co-op to help small black-owned businesses withstand these exact attacks. The silent pressure. But the city didn't stop. 2 days later, trash mysteriously appeared in front of the shop. A letter came in the mail, noise complaint filed by a neighbor. An anonymous tip to the health department claimed, rodent issues. Miss Evelyn shook her head as she nailed the inspection notice to the back wall. "Paper chains," she said quietly. "That's what these are. You don't see them, but they're wrapped around everything we do." Cracks in the foundation. The inspector's visit should have been the last hurdle. But in the weeks that followed, it became clear that bureaucracy was only the surface of the struggle. The bookstore reopened with quiet pride. Word spread slowly, carried in whispers between neighbors and announced in the smiles of elders who remembered what once stood on that corner. The freshly painted sign, Evelyn's Books and More, caught the late afternoon light, making the gold letters glow against deep mahogany wood. For a moment, it seemed like the dream had finally taken root. But dreams in Greenwood had always grown in soil mixed with ashes. Lingering shadows. At first, the foot traffic was steady. Local kids came in after school to read comics, their laughter echoing through aisles that had been silent for years. A few college students browsed the history section, curious about the neighborhood's past. But the cash register didn't sing often enough. Some days, Marcus sat behind the counter flipping through ledgers, watching the street through the wide front windows. He'd notice how certain people slowed down when they passed, not to come in, but to stare. He could feel their judgment pressing against the glass. Miss Evelyn would pretend not to notice, her focus fixed on stacking books just so, but Marcus knew her well enough to see the strain in her hands. One night, as they closed up, she said quietly, "They're waiting. Waiting to see if we stumble." Marcus didn't ask who they were. He already knew. Economic landmines. The city had waived some reopening fees after community pressure, but hidden costs crept in like weeds. The heating system broke in late November, forcing them to use space heaters that chewed through the electric bill. The wholesale price of certain titles jumped, and suppliers began asking for upfront payments. And then there was the letter, not from the city, but from a local business association Marcus had never heard of. It congratulated them on the reopening but included a suggested contribution to remain in good standing. The sum was more than a month's rent. Layla scanned the letter, her eyes narrowing. "This isn't a welcome. It's a shakedown." Marcus crumpled the paper. "They'll get nothing from us." But he knew that refusing came with consequences. The first incident. The first sign came on a Tuesday morning. Marcus arrived early to find the glass of the front door spiderwebbed with cracks. It hadn't shattered completely, but the damage was clear. A brick lay nearby, wrapped in brown paper with a single word scrawled in red marker, "Leave." Miss Evelyn sat on the front steps when he arrived, her coat pulled tight against the cold. She didn't cry, didn't even look at the brick. She simply said, "We fix it and we move on." They did. The glass was replaced by noon, but word traveled fast. Some customers who had been regulars stopped coming. Others came in more often, out of solidarity, but the tension was thick enough to taste. The quiet divide. Inside the community, there were fractures too. Some residents supported the bookstore openly, volunteering to help with events or donating books. Others questioned why Marcus and Miss Evelyn had chosen a business that wasn't essential when the neighborhood needed jobs and housing. A man named Mr. Palmer, who owned the laundromat down the block, cornered Marcus one evening. "You've got your head in the clouds, son. People can't eat books." Marcus kept his voice even. "People can't live without stories either." But later, alone in the back room, his confidence wavered. Layla's plan. If Marcus was the muscle and Miss Evelyn the heart, Layla was the strategist. She noticed the patterns others missed, who came in, what they bought, what they asked for but couldn't find. One evening, she spread a set of spreadsheets across the table. "We can't just be a bookstore. We have to be a hub. Poetry nights, history talks, maybe even tutoring for kids." Marcus frowned. "All that takes time and money." "It takes community," she corrected. "And if the city won't give it to us, we'll build it ourselves." Miss Evelyn listened quietly, her eyes brightening at the thought. The fundraiser. They started small, a history and jazz night. Marcus reached out to a friend who played saxophone, and Miss Evelyn baked enough pies to fill the air with cinnamon and nutmeg. Layla handled the flyers and social media posts. The night of the event, the store overflowed. People leaned against shelves and sat cross-legged on the floor while the music curled through the aisles like smoke. Between sets, elders told stories about Greenwood's past, stories the history books never caught. By the end of the night, they had raised enough to cover the electric bill and order a new batch of books. More importantly, they had reminded people, and themselves, why the bookstore mattered. But not everyone was pleased. 2 days later, Marcus found another envelope under the door. This one wasn't congratulatory. The note inside was typed, cold, and unsigned. "You're drawing attention. Stay quiet, or you won't like the consequences." He didn't show it to Miss Evelyn right away. Instead, he tucked it into the same drawer where the bricks paper still lay. But the knot in his stomach tightened. Resolve. Late that night, Marcus stood in the empty store, the shelves casting long shadows under the dim overhead lights. He ran his fingers over the spines of the books, titles about Black history, resilience, art, and struggle. Every single one was a reminder of what they were fighting for. The threats, the bills, the cracked glass, all of it was meant to push them out. But the more they pushed, the more he dug in. When Miss Evelyn came in the next morning, she found him already unpacking a new shipment. He didn't say anything about the note, just handed her a book and smiled. She opened it to find a dedication he had written in his careful hand. "For the ones who refuse to leave. For the ones who build anyway."